September 7, 2022. If I asked you what the significance of this day was in Pokemon history, you'd probably come up short. And I can't blame you. It's not a particularly remarkable day in Pokemon history. The most notable thing being that on this day a new trailer for Scarlet and Violet dropped. Now granted, this was one of the biggest trailers for the game yet, telling us about the plot and the structure of the story. As the trailer wrapped up, out of nowhere, they hit you with the reveal of 3 new Pokemon: Cloth, Ceruledge, and Armarouge. For most people, this was just something new to get hyped about. One step closer to the release of the highly anticipated Scarlet and Violet. For me, it was the day that Pokemon was permanently changed for me. I didn't know it at the time, but I had just laid eyes on my new favorite Pokemon, and it was love at first sight. It was a mere 3 seconds of screen time, but in just those 3 seconds, Armarouge had changed the chemistry of my brain forever. I immediately knew I liked this thing, but I don't think I quite grasped just how much I did. Of course, with that said, I had a normal and reasonable reaction to this Pokemon, just like any other person would. Yup, perfectly reasonable. And yes, this was before I realized it would become my favorite Pokemon going forward. I just love Armarouge. I love this thing probably way more than I should. How much? Well, I've plastered it everywhere I possibly can. It's all over my Twitter profile, it's my Discord icon with my Discord name being Armarouge's Japanese name, it's my Switch icon, surprise surprise, it's my YouTube icon and banner of course. It's also my wallpaper on both my desktop, my laptop, and my phone. I got into Unite almost solely because Armarouge was playable and have played exclusively Armarouge ever since I unlocked it, to the point that I got to master rank with just Armarouge. I am so sorry to anyone that has ever been in a lobby with me. My Minecraft skin is a bear wearing the auspicious armor. It's my go-to best buddy on Go. I once got 365 Charcadet and evolved them all into Armarouge to want to trade them away for Christmas. And to top it all, I have 377 art pieces saved of just Armarouge. That's not counting the ones where it's together with Ceruledge, which would total to 710 pieces. Well, I think that's everything. Hey, I see you backing away there. Don't go just yet. We have so much to talk about. Needless to say, I love Armarouge. I love it a lot. So much so that I'm now even making a video to gush about it and talk about why I love it so much. Hooray! By the way, did you know that September 19 is considered Charcadet Line Day by the Japanese side of the community? So happy Charcadet Line Day to all those who celebrate. This year, I'm gonna be celebrating by putting all my love for this Pokemon line into one video. Now granted, this video is primarily gonna be centered on Armarouge cause I'm a little biased. But I'll still be talking a bit about Charcadet and Ceruledge because I love those 2 creators almost as much as my number 1 favorite. So if you're not scared yet, then buckle up and let me tell you as to why I love this Fire Knight so damn much. So for starters, what the hell is an Armarouge anyways? Well, you probably know if you're here, but we're talking about it anyways because I feel like it. Armarouge is one of the Pokemon introduced in the 9th generation games, Scarlet and Violet. To get Armarouge, you need to use the item Auspicious Armor on the Charcadet. This item is only native to the Scarlet version, therefore Armarouge is a version exclusive. It's a Fire and Psychic type Pokemon known as the Fire Warrior Pokemon. Armarouge is, well, a knight. That much was clear, I can imagine. It plays on the classic trope of a chivalrous, loyal, and heroic knight. A legendary hero of the people who everyone trusts to defend them. Armarouge's Scarlet Death's entry highlights this, denoting that its armor belonged to a distinguished warrior and that it's extremely loyal. That alone gives you a very good idea of the kind of character that they wanted to show with Armarouge as a species, and I am so into it because let me tell you, I love everything that's night themed. You put a knight character in front of me and I'm immediately sold. I cannot begin to tell you how much I love the trope of a valiant and heroic knight who defends others, and Armarouge to me feels like the textbook example of the trope. Armarouge's origins actually get a little more specific, however. Bulbapedia points to the legend of the Spanish knight Wilfred the Hairy. Now you might be wondering, who the hell is that and why is he hairy? Great question, let's find out. Now, heads up, I'm no history expert, so you'll have to forgive me if I get anything wrong, but I'll try my best. I won't be focusing too much on specific historical events to avoid misinformation, but still, apologies if I get anything wrong. Now then, Wilfred the Hairy was a man from France who became the Count of Barcelona during the 9th century. This was a title given to him by Charles the Bald, a French emperor at the time. Wilfred was a pretty historically significant figure for the history of the country Catalonia, helping unite and repopulate several territories, so he is often credited to being one of the biggest contributing factors for Catalonia's independence. In Catalonia, people remember his actions just as much as they do his legends, it seems. Many poets and writers love to celebrate and exaggerate his life and death, and through this, Wilfred became a symbol of bravery for his people, a hero in the history of Catalonia. For example, according to a legend, one day Wilfred lay injured in his tent after battling with his enemies in a last stand for territory they were losing. Charles the Bald came to his tent to aid him, but he was too late. Charles lay on the ground injured after the battle, and the emperor asked how he could reward Wilfred for his heroic deeds. Admiring his selflessness in defending his people, Wilfred asked for an insignia to decorate his shield, and the emperor wet his fingers with Wilfred's blood, then traced 4 vertical lines on Wilfred's golden shield, and legends attribute this as the reason that Catalonia's flag has 4 vertical red bars on a gold background. Other versions of this legend state that it was the emperor who first gave the golden shield to Wilfred, and the 4 bars were later added by the emperor's successor. However, this is just legend, but you can definitely see how this went on to influence Armarouge. The gold shield with the red stripes is of course very reminiscent of the look of the auspicious armor that Armarouge dons. One could argue that the legend is also referenced in the way that you have to give Armarouge the auspicious armor, as if he were crowning a knight or rewarding a Charcadet for its bravery, much like how the emperor gives the shield to Wilfred in one version of the legend. Other legends of Wilfred talk about how he felled a bloodthirsty dragon who terrorized local towns. This legend is less specific to Armarouge's origin, but it's very similar to the classic story and trope of the knight who sets out to defeat a dragon, a trope that no doubt influenced the way that Armarouge is depicted. I'd like to emphasize, these are legends about Wilfred, not the historical facts, as you could probably imagine with the second legend. But these legends are very important to Catalonia's culture, as to the people of Catalonia, Wilfred was a symbol of bravery, independence, and culture. With all that said, you can see why Armarouge is the kind of Pokemon that it is. It's the embodiment of that trope of the heroic knight, a symbol of bravery, loyalty, and hope. To me, its armor represents those values, just as the emblem of Wilfred that would go on to become Catalonia's flag represents the lands, the people, and their independence and culture. Armarouge represents the kind of hero that Wilfred was to his people, and I think that rocks insanely hard. Prior to the making of this video, I actually did not know how much the legends of Wilfred the Hairy influenced Armarouge, and now I appreciate it even more. I did not think that was possible, but hey, I'll take it. Oh, and if you're wondering why he was called Wilfred the Hairy, well, that's because of another legend tells that before he became a hero to his people, he was exiled as a punishment for killing someone with the goal of avenging his father. After returning to reclaim the rights of lordship that were lost when his father died, much had changed about him. He had to return in secret as he was still considered an outlaw, but upon returning home, stories tell that his mother recognized him because she knew something that was unknown to others. That being that Wilfred had hair where other men do not. Make what you will of that. I don't think anything of that was carried over into Armarouge, but I figured I would satisfy your curiosity as to why he was called that. You're welcome. Well, Now you know why Armarouge's armor has those red stripes on gold plating. But there's another key element of Armarouge that we haven't talked about. I'm talking of course about those large pauldrons on its shoulders. Armarouge is able to psychically move those pauldrons to its arm to form an arm cannon. When it does this, the shape of them resemble a gas cylinder, which is of course used for combustion. So it makes sense that Armarouge does this to increase its firepower. The pauldrons also have a very ornate design on them, and it seems that there is actually a reason as to why. In past wars, it was common practice to craft cannons casted from captured weapons and scrap metals, or alternatively to keep the cannons from the enemy as a trophy. These were known as ceremonial cannons. Many of these cannons had very ornate designs on the barrel or other parts of it, and this is reflected in the ornate patterns of Armarouge's arm cannon. The war trophy aspect of these cannons also reflect the origin of the auspicious armor, since as I mentioned it before, the Pokédex states that it belonged to a distinguished warrior. And yes, I know you've been waiting for me to say it, and I have been waiting for it since the moment this video started. Yes, these cannons are very reminiscent of common depictions of arm cannons in media, and most famous of all, Mega Man. Alright, I can't hide it any longer. I'm gonna let you in on a little secret that's not so secret if you know me. I am a damn huge Mega Man nerd. What I said before is true. I love Armarouge because I love knights. But it's also true that a ginormous chunk of my love for Armarouge comes from its resemblance to the design of Mega Man characters and Mega Man himself. From the moment it put those pauldrons together in the trailer, where it was first showcased, every neuron in my brain fired off when I realized that it resembles Mega Man firing the ever iconic Mega Buster. God, you have no idea how much I love this aspect about it. The fact that one of my favorite series takes elements from my other most favorite series and combines it with the thing that I love is something that to this day still amazes me as much as it did when I first saw it. And the best part is that the Mega Man vibe of this thing goes way beyond the arm cannon. Armarouge's proportions in general feel very reminiscent of a Mega Man character. The shape of the feet, the big mitten-like hands, and one of my favorite aspects, the horns on the side of its head, which are very reminiscent of the helmet horns you see on the characters from the Mega Man Zero games. I especially love that with a few tweaks, you could just plop Armarouge into either the classic or Battle Network games, and it would just fit right in. Especially the Battle Network series, it feels like a design that came right out of those games. Here's a fun fact for you. Hitoshi Ariga, the mangaka behind the Megamits and Gigamits Mega Man mangas, designed a lot of Pokemon for the series. He's got a lot of bangers under his name, for example, Tyrantrum, Aegislash, Necrozma, Vikavolt, Corviknight, and more. He also did the design for quite a few Gen 9 Pokemon such as the Nacli line, Spathra, Fluttermane, the beloved Ogerpon, and no other Gen 9 Pokemon. Yeah, I bet you were waiting for me to say Armarouge there. How could the most Mega Man thing ever not be designed by someone who worked on the Mega Man manga? He has actually drawn the pair for some merchandise and they look great in his style. They're a natural fit for it, but he did not design them. By the way, I just wanted to say that Hitoshi Ariga's redesigns are so incredibly cool. Look at these redesigns. He did the design for the Mega Man mangas and I love them. I just wanted to glaze them for a moment because look at these masterpieces. I really love Hitoshi Ariga artworks. That's all. It's such a no-brainer that it would be Ariga who designed Armarouge and the other members of this line, and so it became a common misconception, but that's not actually the case. So who designed these beautiful, beautiful creatures? Well, on November 17, 2023, the designer came forth to announce themselves, and it was none other than Tomohiro Kitakaze. They worked with Game Freak as a character designer for Generation 5 and 6, as well as a conceptual character artist for the Genesect, Bikini, Hoopa, Volcanion, and Diancie movies. Tomohiro Kitakaze has actually designed other Pokemon too. It's unknown how many he designed, but we do know that he designed the Scolipede line, Mega Mewtwo Y, and the Cavalier line. I guess these weren't the first knights he brought to the series. So a round of applause for Tomohiro Kitakaze for designing this trio. He did an amazing design work here. Tomohiro Kitakase, thank you for bringing these creatures into the world. I will lay down my life for you, and if you have enemies that need to be taken care of, call me bro, I got you. You'd think Tomohiro Kitakase has worked on Mega Man before or something, but nope, as far as I can tell, he hasn't. I'd love to know if he's actually a huge Mega Man fan or anything, but as you can probably imagine, his Twitter is entirely in Japanese, so that's difficult to learn about. Regardless, I'd say it's pretty clear some inspiration was taken for the army cannon aspect. The rest, I suppose it's up to interpretation. Now before we finish with Armarouge's design, there's a few more things I want to gush about here. First, I just adore the flame on top of Armarouge's head. Having a flame act as the plume on a knight's helmet is such a fun idea, and I love that it also resembles hair. You can kind of interpret it as Armarouge also having a ponytail, and I think that's really cute. It might sound weird to call any part of Armarouge cute, but some aspects about it are genuinely cute to me. It's first and foremost a cool Pokemon to me, but the fact that it's got some elements which can be seen as cute make me love it even more. A combination of those is perfect to me. For example, the little bit of the pink at the end is especially cute, and I also love it because it makes the fire feel a little more magical, highlighting the psychic aspect of Armarouge. By the way, did you know that if you use a stellar terrestrialization on Armarouge, the plume goes rainbow? This is one of the coolest things about Armarouge to me. This is the reason why I keep Stellar Terra on mine. It really makes Stellar Terra feel like some kind of ultimate power-up. Another example of cuteness that I see in Armarouge is the hands. I already mentioned that they kinda look like oven mitts, and I just think that's very cute. Pokemon designers often give sillier design elements to cool Pokemon to get them more friendly looking. It's part of their design philosophy for Pokemon, and I feel that's the reason Armarouge has oven mitt hands. It's very cute. I also just love the flames coming from Armarouge's eyes. It's a design element that is constantly in movement, just like the plume, and it makes Armarouge feel so dynamic and alive. I don't really know how else to explain it. It's a fun design element though, especially because it's a perfect way to showcase when it's fired up in battle. You can showcase it through a little burst of fire in the eyes, or a longer trail of fire to show the intensity of its actions. The fact that you can do that is just plain awesome to me. Armarouge's eyes are one of its aspects that I especially love because they do a lot of the heavy lifting to show what emotions Armarouge is expressing, since it has no visible mouth. To me, the eyes look both cute, reassuring, a little bit intimidating, and most of all determined to me all at once. And the fact that this design can accomplish that is nothing short of impressive to me. I also just love Armarouge's color scheme in general. I'm a sucker for red characters, so it's off to a good start. But I also just love how the red contrasts with the black, and I also love the way that it goes from black to brownish red and into the burning red at the end of its hands and legs. The shining gold that comes from the armor to top it off is just so striking and works as the cherry on top. Now let's talk a little bit about Armarouge's animations, since it's a somewhat related aspect to the design. I love how Armarouge is animated in game. A lot of Armarouge's animations kind of make it out to seem really prideful, which I think goes great with the chivalrous knight characterization. For example, some animations show it cleaning its armor. A knight can't be walking around with their precious armor all dirty after all, it's a symbol. When you talk to Armarouge, it laughs out quite strongly. It feels like it just got done telling the tale of some epic journey or battle, which is of course very fitting for it, or it's like it's saying, "Come at me, I dare you." Fun fact, almost every Pokemon in the game has special animations that only play in the Star Barrage mode or in Synchro mode. Armarouge's show it bumping its fists together like it's about to throw hands, which is a very funny thing to me considering that it's a ranged fighter, except when it decides to slam down its cannons on somebody else. I don't know why they let it do that, but it's so funny and I love it. Fun fact, to my knowledge, the only way to see this animation before the DLC was to use a Zoroark with Break Break, as none of Armarouge's physical attacks use this animation, as far as I know at least. Speaking of Armarouge's physical methods, I also just love how its physical attack animation is it dashing towards the enemy with one of the Paw Runes. Another one of those things that feel very Mega Man to me, and it's also just conceptually cool. The idea of Armarouge using them to block projectiles as it dashes towards the enemy or using them to stun the enemy is really cool to me. Imagining it using flame charge this way is very fun. There's also another animation that shows it tapping its foot while standing around, like it's stretching before a battle. A lot of its animations give it this feeling like it's just waiting for the battle to start, but it already knows it has won because it cannot lose. A knight cannot afford to lose after all. I also gotta give a shout out to its sleeping animation. It really nails that feeling of a warrior resting after a long fight or journey, but they still haven't completely let down their guard. It's just a momentary rest. There's also this animation it does sometimes in Let's Go mode where it puts out its hand and shakes its head at you in disapproval. It's just a very funny animation to me because it feels so different from all the other animations, yet it still feels so in character for it in a way. Now, that's just the in-game animations. Armarouge has had the privilege to be in some animated mediums, and I have been dying to talk about one in particular, as you could probably imagine with the amount of footage and screenshots I've been using. So let's get to that, shall we? Armarouge fans are probably one of the luckiest fans of any Pokemon, considering we got an entire 17-minute Poketoon animation dedicated to this Pokemon line. And I think that the day that this animation dropped is probably the second happiest day of my life. Only beaten by the day that I got my Armarouge in-game, and preceded by the day that Armarouge got announced. I could honestly dedicate an entire video just to this animation, but I'll try to keep it short. Emphasis on try, I make no promises. So, the basic plot is this. There's two wild Charcadets that hang out in the wilds of Paldea. One is more courageous and the other is timid. One day, a trainer comes along and battles and catches one of them, bringing it along for its journey. But in its excitement, the courageous Charcadet forgets the timid one and leaves it behind. Time passes, and the courageous one evolves into Armarouge under the care of its trainer. Meanwhile, the timid one evolves into Ceruledge through struggle in the wilderness. The bitter resentment in the malicious armor and Ceruledge's own emotion drives it to seek out its old friend to settle the score. They battle it out and tie, and this lets them rekindle their friendship. But to be honest, that description doesn't do it any justice. I implore you to go watch it if you haven't. Trying to put my Armarouge bias aside, this is generally one of the coolest and most beautiful animations Pokemon has put out. The battle choreography here is insane. I don't know how else to describe it. If I didn't already love Armarouge as much as I did, this animation for sure would have sold me on it. It's my favorite depiction of Armarouge in anything because it makes great use of everything that makes Armarouge cool. You see it block attacks with the pauldrons, the expressiveness of the eyes, the use of the aforementioned flames on its eyes and head for more expressiveness, and so much more. They showcase Armarouge straight up rocket jumping using its arm cannon to propel itself, which had never even crossed my mind prior to seeing this. When I first watched this animation, I genuinely freaked out when I got to this part because I couldn't believe they showed something like that. It was so cool. Now, of course, this animation oozes with Mega Man vibes in its movement. Maybe that's just me, but I don't know, man. The way that it jumps around everywhere, the arm cannon attacks, the way that it jumps and shoots at the same time, and the fact that they gave it Energy Ball, which feels a lot like the charge shots you see in Mega Man. It's just so great. The rooftop battle with Armarouge and Ceruledge is so fast-paced and dynamic that it's genuinely hard to describe with words. Just watch it, it's a sight to behold. The battle choreography here leaves me with no words every time, even though I've rewatched this probably an unhealthy amount of times. I love all the ways they make Armarouge use its pauldrons for defense, all the ways that it attacks, all the ways it can move, all the ways they show its character and make it express through its body language. I love the characterization of Armarouge here, and even Ceruledge is characterized perfectly here. Hell, even Charcadet is perfectly represented here. I adore the story they told with these Pokemon. I love it, I love it, I love it, man. Like I said, I could make a whole standalone video about it. It's one of my favorite things to come out from Pokemon ever, and I'm so fortunate that it exists. In general, I'm pretty lucky as an Armarouge fan, I cannot lie, because as of the making of this video, the current protagonist of the Pokemon anime, Liko, has a Charcadet that is no doubt destined to evolve into an Armarouge, and getting to have Armarouge as part of the main cast of the anime is beyond my wildest dreams. Let me tell you, when the Charcadet was first shown and Liko didn't catch it, I was kinda coping. I was in like such disbelief, but I was in even bigger disbelief when the writers made her go back to catch it like 50 episodes later. So never stop taking copium, I guess. You might just get your wish. There's also this TCG expansion trailer that I go back to a lot because it features Armarouge. It's very short, but even so, I find a lot to love with how Armarouge was depicted here. I'm gonna sound like a broken record here, but again, the way that it jumps about and shoots at the same time is so much like Mega Man to me, even down to the shape of the flame projectiles. I love the way that it lands after fighting Iron Valiant and the pose that it hits when it teams up with it too. Which, by the way, an Armarouge and Iron Valiant team up goes insanely hard. It's all small stuff, but I love it. I go back to it way more than I should. This is also a perfect transition to talk about Armarouge in the TCG. Now I'll be honest, I'm not a TCG player. I started battling in Pocket for the first time recently and I haven't even done that much, so I'm talking purely about the art here. There isn't that much to say that I haven't already said, but I can't not talk about them. The art on these cards is simply great. I love the pose that Armarouge hits in a lot of these. Much like its in-game animations, it feels like it's ready to rush into battle, or already is in battle in some cases. I love this one because it feels very soothing. Like a knight that's been waiting for the rain to end before moving on with their journey. The rainbows and reflection make this a very beautiful card as a whole. It's also always been kind of fascinating to look at because, to my knowledge, there has never been a place in the games that has this kind of look. It reminds me a lot of Greek towns such as Mykonos or Santorini. Or you know, Apotos if you're a Sonic nerd like me. Which is a fun thought. I would love to see a region that has towns like this in a future game. There's also this Armarouge EX card. It's pretty basic, but I just like the way it's posed here. Coupled with the gold background, it makes it feel like it's powering up or something. Armarouge has a couple other cool cards, but weirdly, my favorite one is one of the more basic ones. That being this one. Something about the art style for this one is just perfect for it. It makes me really love this card. I love the flames swirling around it and the pink highlights on them, highlighting the magic psychic aspect of them, much like its bloom. The pose here is great because it feels both like it's telling you to stop as if it's warning you to not approach it, but also like it's about to fire off a fire blast from its hands. The hands here look very blocky compared to how they normally look, but I think there's a charm to that. I quite like it. The colors in general in this artwork are just so nice. I already mentioned the flames, but I also love the shade of yellow they used on the auspicious armor. The red on Armarouge is vibrant, but it's less orangey than it is in game, and I think this shade of red really suits it. Soichiro Gonjima did an outstanding work on this piece and I love it. I also hope that I didn't mispronounce their name after praising their work so much. So, going back to the game for a little bit, I want to talk about what Armarouge can do in-game, as this is actually yet another reason I fell in love with the Pokemon as much as I did. So, as I mentioned before, Armarouge is a fire and psychic type Pokemon, so it gets access to a lot of the moves you would typically expect. Flamethrower, Psychic, Lava Plume, Psyshock, the works. There's a lot of other cool things in its arsenal though. Through TMs, Armarouge actually gets kind of an insane amount of coverage. You've got some fun or quirky options like Dragon Pulse, Aura Sphere, Solar Beam, Scorching Sands, Weather Ball, or Meteor Beam. Those aren't particularly useful generally speaking, but it's really cool that it gets access to those. Meteor Beam and Solar Beam especially because seeing a giant laser come out of those cannons brings me a special kind of joy. Though weirdly enough, it doesn't get Hyper Beam. Not that it'd be useful, but it would be cool to see it fire it off. Armarouge also gets a ton of pretty useful coverage, such as Energy Ball, Flash Cannon, Shadow Ball, and Dark Pulse. It has such a wide variety of moves, and that's something I really appreciate in a Pokemon. I think that Pokemon with such wide variety of coverage are really fun to use in a playthrough, and Armarouge delivers in that department tenfold. And because I can't shut up about Mega Man, I have to mention it. The fact that Armarouge just gets so many options for types feels very reminiscent of Mega Man having a varied arsenal in each game. It's fun. Of course, I also can't not mention Armor Cannon, its signature move. It's essentially a fire type and special version of the move Close Combat. It's a very cool move that packs quite a punch. I don't have much else to say about it specifically though. Aside from that, there's two particular moves that I want to mention that I haven't brought attention to. First off is Acid Spray. It's not a particularly useful move for PvP, but in Terror Raids, it's one of the best moves that you can have. Meaning that Armarouge is an excellent Pokemon for raids, as it can help allies or itself by lowering the boss's special defense. In general, it's a great ally because it gets moves such as Reflect, Light Screen, Helping Hand, and Taunt. I love playing support, so that's perfect for me. The other move that I want to highlight is Expanding Force. This move is interesting for two reasons. One is that prior to the DLC, Armarouge was the only Pokemon to get this move in Gen 9, so for a while, it was almost a pseudo-signature move for it. It was introduced in Gen 8's DLC, so a bunch of Pokemon had it before. It was just the only one to naturally learn it in Gen 9. This move is also important because it's basically 80% of the reason that Armarouge had a pretty good competitive career in VGC doubles. In competitive, Armarouge would often use Expanding Force alongside a partner in DD to set Psychic Terrain. This move then becomes a spread move and gains a significant increase in power under Psychic Terrain. So you would send the duo in, click Expanding Force, and watch the opponent's health disappear a lot of the time. It was a hit or miss strategy sometimes, but it's all out of competitive use. A lot of players hated fighting it because of how matches with it tended to play out. I myself used it for a little bit, and I can see why, to be honest. Nevertheless, it's very cool to me that Armarouge was able to have some spotlight on the competitive scene for a while thanks to this move. As a side note for its gameplay, it's such a tragedy that Armarouge didn't get to have Mega Launcher as an ability. It gets a ton of pulse moves, and it would have been a perfect way to give the Arm Cannons an extra layer of importance. A lot of people were shocked that it didn't get it as well as Ceruledge not getting sharpness. It really is quite a weird thing. Mega Launcher felt like such a perfect ability for the Pokemon, sharpness especially for Ceruledge. I wonder if they just really wanted to keep Mega Launcher exclusive to Clawitzer. Oh well, I guess. What can you do? Now, it's true that this is an Armarouge focused video, but I did make this video to celebrate Charcadet Line Day, so let's talk a little about Ceruledge. Listen, Armarouge may be my #1 Pokemon, but I'll be the first to say, Ceruledge is just cool, man. I don't know what else you want me to say. Every part of this thing and every movement that it does screams coolness. And it's pretty clear that the Pokemon Company agrees, because between the two of them, Ceruledge has definitely been the one to receive the most official love. It's been featured in the anime from the start, it's in a bunch of promotional material, got into Unite First, and so on. And honestly, I can't even blame them. Seeing Ceruledge in action is just always a treat. Just put on any episode of Pokemon Horizons that features a Meteor and his Ceruledge, and you're in for some of the greatest action scenes that Horizons has. Ceruledge feels so dynamic in Horizons with the way that they gave it Phantom Force, so its fighting style is entirely based around teleporting to surprise the enemy and then dipping. It's honestly perfect for the Pokemon, seeing Ceruledge highlights speed a little more than Armarouge. Of course, in the Poketoon episode that I already praised to no end, Ceruledge is simply incredible to look at. Ceruledge is so agile and dynamic in this animation. The way that it jumps around and dashes to strike is mesmerizing. They play up the speed aspect a ton in this animation, and it's great for Ceruledge. It's a sight to behold. They also did such an excellent job of highlighting the fact that Ceruledge is a more intimidating counterpart to Armarouge. It's the Black Knight of the duo, and that is such a great concept. This is what makes the Charcadet line work. Whereas Armarouge is the chivalrous knight that everyone trusts, Ceruledge is the Black Knight that people fear. Armarouge is fair and friendly. Ceruledge is cunning and cold. That is the dynamic of the Charcadet line. They each represent a different knight trope perfectly, and that makes me love them as a group like you cannot imagine. Now mind you, I called Ceruledge cunning and intimidating, but I never said it's evil. It's true that in a lot of media the Black Knight tends to be an antagonist, but there's also times where the Black Knight is a character that still fights for justice. They just have their own way of doing it. Ceruledge can be interpreted as the knight that will do whatever it takes to win at whatever cost. They aren't exactly evil, but their goals and methods don't always align with the views of others, so they may oppose them if need be. Even the Poketoon episode highlights this, showing that Ceruledge is not above using bystanders as covers if it means winning. Although this isn't from a knight character, the best example that I can give is Sonic and Shadow, which might be a funny example, but it fits. Sonic is the type of character that is always trying to do good. He's the hero that everyone knows. He's friendly with everyone and trusted by all. Shadow, on the other hand, is a character that tries to do good but may have different motives or goals. His methods can be more harsh, he's intimidating, and he's often feared by other characters. Tell me that doesn't sound like the exact dynamic of Armarouge and Ceruledge that I was describing. The Pokédex itself highlights this, stating that Ceruledge is far more merciless than Armarouge. It's powered by grudges and resentment, rather than the auspicious wishes of the auspicious armor. Ceruledge is just cool, man. Like, I know I keep saying it, but just look at this thing. A lot of my praises for Armarouge's design still apply here, down to the Mega Man vibes. But there's a couple things I want to highlight about Ceruledge. Let's start off with the biggest element, those blades. They are the backbone of this design. They look great in art, but they really shine in animation. The way they can be withdrawn and extended, the way the colors fade into each other, the flames at the top of the sword, all of that comes together to make Ceruledge a very striking Pokemon in motion. I also just love the huge boots that Ceruledge has. They make Ceruledge feel a lot taller and imposing, which is of course perfect for it. The combination of the giant blades and the big boots gives you the impression that Ceruledge wouldn't be focused on speed, but they love to highlight that Ceruledge is a speedy fighter, and that never gets old to watch. It's also really cool that Ceruledge is the only one of the two to have boots. This makes Ceruledge be more covered and armored than Armarouge, ironically enough. Even the shape of the helmet feels like it hides Ceruledge's face a little bit more, as well as the blades coming out of its armored hands. All of this is really important to Ceruledge's design, because it's a key part of the Black Knight trope that you don't see the knight's face. They are never seen without their armor. That's part of what makes them so unapproachable and fearsome. And Ceruledge, being more armored and covered than Armarouge, is there to highlight this aspect of the trope. Armarouge and Ceruledge would not be complete without each other. In my opinion, neither of them would be as cool of a Pokemon if the other didn't exist. The both of them have to exist to highlight the contrast. If there's a knight, then there has to be a Black Knight, and there cannot be a Black Knight without a chivalrous knight. Simple as that. So, where does Charcadet fit into all of this? Well, Charcadet, being the pre-evolution, is of course the Squire, the knight in training. I have far less to say about Charcadet since it's a much simpler Pokemon, but I do quite love it nevertheless. It's a cute little guy, the textbook definition of a cute little guy even. Tiny proportions, big head and big eyes. What's not to love? It resembles Armarouge far more than it does Ceruledge, which I've always found to be an interesting idea, because it feels like they're trying to present it as Armarouge is the intended path, the righteous path, what all cadets should strive to be, and then Ceruledge would be the cadet that has strayed from the path of chivalry. They follow their own path, and whether that's good or bad is for them to decide. Back to Charcadet though, I love the little fire scarf that it has. It's a small but cute detail and it gives it the feeling of this wandering knight in training. One thing I really love about Charcadet though is the personality that it creates for its evolutions. The Pokédex states that Charcadet will battle opponents stronger than even itself. Though it's still in training, it has already begun to develop the courage that a knight needs. It knows that a knight never backs down from a fight, even when the odds are stacked against it. Charcadet is ultimately, however, a child, and I love when they highlight that in its appearances. In Poketoon, we see that it's impulsive and short-sighted. The courageous Charcadet quickly jumps at the chance for a journey because it's cool to them, and then accidentally forgets about its friend in the process. In Horizons, we see that it's a very playful Pokemon. It rides around Terrapagos like it's a horse at any chance it gets, but it also highlights the courage of Charcadet, challenging a Ceruledge to a fight, despite the overwhelming disadvantage. In the manga, Charcadet is shown clinging to its trainer's leg as if it were a kid with their parent. I love Charcadet because it's a very cute and playful little guy, but one that still highlights the courage and will of a knight that is yet to be. And also the scarf reminds me of Protoman from Mega Man. I just had to say it. Okay, moving on. So, before getting to the final part of the video, I just want to talk a couple more things that I didn't really know where else to fit. So first off, let's talk about one very infamous aspect about the Charcadet line. Their shinies. Gen 9 had a ton of really subtle shinies for some reason, and the example that always pops into people's mind first is the Charcadet line. I've always had pretty mixed feelings on these shinies. I wouldn't say I dislike them, but I do of course wish they had been more. I think Armarouge with blue eyes looks incredibly cool. This light blue is very nice because it feels kind of comforting and mystical. Both aspects that are important to highlight on Armarouge. It feels like an Armarouge that is overrunning with psychic power, and I like that. Ceruledge meanwhile gets orange eyes, and even though this is basically the default eye color for Charcadet and Armarouge, I quite love how it looks on Ceruledge. I think the burning orange contrasted with the black and purple is pretty striking, even if it's a small part of the design. I feel like you can interpret it as the Ceruledge that is burning with rage, so the fire in their eyes is stronger than the usual ghostly purple. Alternatively, you can go the opposite route. Maybe it's a Ceruledge that attempts to walk the path of chivalry once more, letting go of the grudges that power its armor, and so the ghostly purple starts to fade. What are they thinking of all of this when they chose the shinies? Probably not, let's be honest. Realistically, it just comes down to we gave Armarouge blue because Ceruledge is bluish, and we gave Ceruledge orange because Armarouge is orangish. A simple color swap. Like I said, I think these shinies look cool. To an extent, I almost appreciate the subtlety because it almost feels like they're saying, yeah, we don't need to change anything, they're perfect as they are, just do a cute little thing for the eyes. But that might just be my way of coping with the fact that we're stuck with these. Of course, people always talk about how swapping their colors around would have been perfect. It definitely would have been nice to see. I also remember mock-ups that made Armarouge blue and Ceruledge red, which, let's be honest, that wasn't happening, but god, I cannot imagine how hard I would have popped off had that been the case. One other alternative I see people propose is, if they wanted to keep the subtlety, was to just mute the colors a little bit. And I actually think I like this option the most, surprisingly. Fun fact, they actually somewhat did this for Charcadet. In the Poketoon, the one that's shiny has an ever so slightly lighter shade of red. It's really noticeable, but it's there. It would have been nice to see that on Armarouge shiny. People often say that the shinies are this way because it would make no sense for the armor to change color, but the Pokemon are not the armor. Well, not in a physical sense at least. You could argue that in a metaphorical sense they are the armor, if you want to get quirky, but anyways. They take elements from the trope of a possessed armor, but ultimately they're just wearing it. So I think at least, if not the armor, then it would have been nice to see the bodies change. Oh well, at least what we get has some coolness to it at the end of the day. Moving on, I also just wanted to talk about Armarouge in the manga because I recently read it, and I'll admit, the reason was almost entirely because I wanted to see the Armarouge panels. I guess I should say some light spoilers from the manga if you want to read it, and you haven't yet, so you've been warned. Anyways, Armarouge is great in the manga, honestly. It just looks cool every time the protagonist, Scarlet Koto, pulls it out. It hits a lot of great poses that highlight just how cool this design is in action. The manga especially makes it feel so Mega Man-ish. I might be grasping at straws here, but something about the shape of the blast and the way that it rapid fires its shots towards an earthworm in one of the panels in an almost Battle Network or classic Mega Man-like fashion makes me think of Mega Man here especially. They also show that Armarouge can fire off fireballs from its hands, which I thought was cool. Maybe one of those things that everyone had always just assumed it could do naturally, and it makes sense. Me personally, I always wondered if it needed the pauldrons to shoot the fire or not. I found this Armarouge to be interesting because of the trainer that it belongs to, Scarlet Koto. As a character, so far, it seems like she would have a Ceruledge based on her personality. She does what she needs to accomplish her goals, and her methods are not something that people always agree with, like with Ceruledge. But nevertheless, the Armarouge is still loyal to her. I'm not expecting them to explore the dynamic between them, but it's food for thought to think about if there's a reason an Armarouge would stop being loyal to a trainer. Now, I would like to get to what's probably the most personal part of the video, which is funny to say in a video that already feels very personal and self-indulgent. I think that there can be many reasons why someone's Pokemon is their favorite. It can be the design, the inspirations, how they play in game, or sometimes you just look at a guy and you think to yourself, yeah, I vibe with that one the most, that one's my favorite. For me, one of the things that influences my love for a Pokemon the most is my experiences with the Pokemon. A Pokemon that I never cared about can suddenly become a Pokemon that I really love after using it in a playthrough. Sometimes you just have magical experiences with a Pokemon when you play the game, and those experiences shape your perspective on that Pokemon. So, of course, you probably know where I'm going with this. When Armarouge was first shown, I immediately knew I wanted to have one on my team. Funnily enough, for a little bit I debated whether I liked Armarouge or Ceruledge more, but in the end, you can see which one came out on top. I decided that my heart was set on Armarouge, and it was set in stone. So when the game came out, the lead up until I could get a Charcadet was very exciting to me. I was playing the game with a friend, and luckily they knew where it could be found. So we go to the east exit of Mesagoza and into the south province. Very close to the entrance, if you go straight, you find this little cliff with a single tree on it. And in this little spot, you find a fit encounter for a Charcadet. I had found my Charcadet. It was a female Charcadet. This moment has always been very special to me because the experience of having a friend tell you is something in Pokemon, I think is very cool. Pokemon is often meant to be a social experience after all, but then the Charcadet encounter itself is very special to me. I had a bunch of basic Pokeballs and one Premier Ball to catch this Charcadet. Of course, as I already knew that this Pokemon was special to me, I wanted to go for the Premier Ball. So I threw my one Premier Ball and it caught. Since then, I've come to realize that Charcadet can honestly be kind of a pain to catch. Not difficult, but they can be stubborn and take a few Pokeballs sometimes. So when I look back on this moment and seeing that this Charcadet caught in the one single Premier Ball I had, it feels special, like it was fate. I had a bunch of ideas on what to name this Charcadet. I looked for both male and female names to prepare for either option. I was that excited to get it that I looked up names before even starting the game. I had some options like Blaze, Mars, or just Scarlet, but I settled on one option that to this day is probably my favorite nickname that I've come up and used for a Pokemon. The name of this Charcadet was going to be Auburn. What does this name mean? Well, Auburn itself is a shade of red, so it's perfect for the red Pokemon that was Scarlet exclusive. But there's a double meaning. AU is the chemical symbol for gold, so that represents the gold armor it dons. And of course, burn represents the fire aspect of the Pokemon. Every part of the name has meaning, and I love that about it. It also just feels like a very knightly name, you know? Like it's the name that you would give to a knight type of character. Auburn would go to become a very special Pokemon to me, because this Armarouge would be there for every part of my journey in Scarlet. From the very beginning of the adventure, from the first item we took down, to the very end of the adventure against Sada. From the release of the Teal Mask, to the end of the DLC when we fought Terrapagos as well as Pekarunt. It was there when I caught 365 Charcadet for Christmas. It was there when I did the first raid of my 7-star series on this channel with a friend. It has been there for the entire ride. And it has been there for every shiny hunt. It has been there for so many raids, both as an attacker and a supporter ally. It has been there for every union circle I do with friends, and it is still with me every time I come back to the game. Auburn does not leave my party, unless she absolutely has to when I'm doing some breeding. It has been with me through thick and thin for the past 3 years. This single Armarouge to me is more valuable than some of my rarest shinies because to me it is the representation of all the experiences I've had in Scarlet and throughout these years, and I consider that irreplaceable. I love Armarouge's design to death. I love its inspirations more than you can imagine. I love how it plays in game. I love how it's depicted in other mediums. I love the Mega Man feel to it. But if it wasn't because Auburn was there the entire time, it might not have been the Pokemon to take the #1 spot for me. Auburn may be a very average Armarouge, no different from any other Armarouge you could get in your game. But it's also a one-of-a-kind Pokemon because there isn't any other Pokemon like it for me. It's the only Auburn in the world. And it might be silly to place so much importance on an individual Pokemon like this, but I don't care. I love Auburn. I love that she's a representation of all my experiences in the game and these past few years, and I love that she has been there for all of it. Well, that's it then. That is every reason as to why Armarouge is my favorite Pokemon, and yet I still feel like there's so much more I could say. I didn't even talk about how I have an Armarouge of every Terra type. I didn't mention how the Charcadet line is made out of charcoal, and that is something you can see in Armarouge because of the sound of its steps and the texture that it has. I didn't talk about how fun it is to play in Unite as Armarouge. I didn't talk about the meaning of its name, but we'd be here all day if I continued. I think I got the message across. I love Armarouge and every facet of it. From its design to its inspirations, from the gameplay to my experiences with it, from the animation to the personality that it shows, and not just Armarouge, Ceruledge and Charcadet too. As I said before, they are a vital part of the picture. This video was not the most professional, shall we say. The audio is kinda janky, the editing is kinda simple, and the script and narration were probably kinda messy. Sorry about that. But I just wanted to put all my love I feel for this Pokemon in one place, as a tribute to it, to celebrate Charcadet Line Day. So if you've made it this far, I hope you find some enjoyment in seeing some crazy guy ramble about how he loves a Pokemon way too much for his own good. If you made it this far, then all I can say is thank you. And I hope you found something new to appreciate in Armarouge or the rest of the line that you hadn't seen before. Now, if you'll excuse me, that new Armarouge outfit in Unite won't unlock itself. I have a battle pass to grind, so hey, I'll see you some other time. Later.